Hello friend, watch my story till end. And don't forget to subscribe. He once believed his life was steady, predictable, and safe. Each morning began the same way, with sunlight spilling across the floorboards and the scent of breakfast drifting from the kitchen. Each evening ended with the same soft smile, the same careful hand offering him a small white pill, and the same tender whisper reminding him to rest. For 18 years, this rhythm was his world. He called it love. He called it marriage. He called it home. He had no idea he was naming his own captivity. He worked long hours, leaving before dawn and returning when the sky had already begun to dim. The house was always immaculate when he stepped inside, floors shining, curtains perfectly arranged, dinner warm and waiting. She would greet him with concern in her eyes, touching his face as if she could feel the exhaustion in his bones. "You look tired," she'd murmur, guiding him to sit, pouring him water, placing the pill into his palm with the care of someone offering a cure. He trusted her completely, trusted the softness of her voice, the steadiness of her smile, the gentle insistence that he needed rest. He never questioned why rest always came in the form of a pill. The first nights, it felt harmless. The pills helped him sleep deeply, without interruption, without dream or thought. He woke refreshed at first, grateful. He thanked her, and she smiled like someone who had done something noble. But as weeks became months and months became years, the pills began to carve their own shape inside his life. He stopped noticing when they made him feel heavy, when they blurred the edges of his evenings, when they turned the nights into blank spaces he could never fully remember. He just accepted the feeling, because comfort, when repeated long enough, becomes truth. He didn't know the truth was the one thing he wasn't being given. She managed every detail of their home, the bills, the paperwork, the appointments, things he used to handle before life got too tiring, before the pills made him drowsy, before he became content letting her take the lead. She said she enjoyed it. She said he worked too hard to worry about such things. And he believed her, because love, in his mind, was built on belief. So he surrendered each part of his life bit by bit, without ever realizing he was slowly disappearing from it. On the weekends, he tried to reclaim pieces of connection. He asked to watch movies with her late into the night, or sit together on the porch and talk the way they used to. But she would always shake her head gently, brushing her fingers over his forehead with that familiar look of concern. "You look exhausted," she'd repeat. "Take your pill. Rest. We can spend time together tomorrow." But tomorrow never came, not in any real sense. Tomorrow was always another version of the same routine: dinner, pill, sleep, silence. Over time, even the simplest things began slipping from him. He couldn't remember the last time he read a book before bed. Couldn't remember when he last stayed awake past 10. Couldn't remember the sensation of drifting off naturally, the way he once did as a younger man. Now sleep hit him like a sudden drop, one moment awake, the next swallowed by darkness. He chalked it up to age, to work, to stress. He never thought to question the one thing consistent in every night's ending: her hand, her smile, the pill. Whenever he traveled for work, she packed the pills with him. She counted them out, labeled them in small containers, reminding him to take one each night. "You won't sleep well without them," she'd insist. "Your body needs routine." And he believed her, because everything she said seemed wrapped in care. Everything she did looked like devotion. He didn't see the sharpness hidden underneath. There were signs, small ones. Late-night phone calls she explained away as her sister needing advice. Unfamiliar scents on her clothes. Musky, heavy, not the floral tone she usually wore. Laundry folded twice when he was certain it had been handled once. The back gate left unlocked more often than he remembered opening it. But signs mean nothing to a man who trusts with his whole chest. A man who loves without reserve. A man who thinks loyalty means closing his eyes to anything uncomfortable. He told his friends he was lucky. Told them he had married a woman who cared so deeply for his well-being that she never let him go to bed without ensuring he slept properly. His friends smiled, some with envy, some with confusion, but he didn't notice. He was too confident in the world he believed he lived in. She sometimes complained that he snored too loudly, saying it kept her awake. She began sleeping in another room occasionally, claiming she needed quiet to read. He never thought to question why she stayed awake so late, why he heard soft noises in the house long after he had supposedly drifted off, why the faint click of the back door occasionally interrupted his dreams. He blamed it on the house settling, the wind, his imagination. He never blamed her. Because trust makes people blind. It makes people slow to question. It makes people build entire worlds on illusions, simply because they want the illusion to be real. Some mornings, he woke to find her already dressed, hair neatly combed, face fresh as though she had just stepped out of the shower. She would tell him she couldn't sleep and had been awake for hours. He believed her. He always believed her. Once, he misplaced the pill bottle. He searched the kitchen repeatedly, his movements sluggish, his mind clouded. She appeared behind him suddenly, holding the bottle in her hand, saying she must have moved it while cleaning. For a moment, only a moment, he noticed something odd in her expression. Tension, perhaps fear. But it vanished quickly behind her usual smile. He brushed it off. He was used to brushing things off. Habit becomes a leash when you never tug back. The years passed quietly, the kind of quiet that feels peaceful until you realize it's the quiet of suffocation, not serenity. He faded into his routine, into his home, into the space she had carved for him. His world narrowed to simple motions. Work, dinner, pills, sleep. The night belonged not to him, but to the spell she cast over him daily. A spell he never questioned, a spell designed to keep him unaware. He didn't see the moments she slipped away after he fell asleep. Didn't see the back door open and close. Didn't see the way she checked her reflection one last time before stepping into the darkness beyond their fence. Didn't see the second life she lived outside the glow of their shared home. He only felt the softness of the bed, the weight of the pill, the haze of sleep swallowing him before he could wonder what she did when the lights went out. When he woke, she was always there, early, composed, smiling, as if she never left. He accepted the life she created for him with the trust of a man who believed he was loved, believed he was protected, believed his wife cared so deeply for him that she wanted him to rest, always rest. He had no idea that the one who tucked him in a nightly darkness was the same one who kept the truth hidden behind his sleeping eyes. 18 years of peace. 18 years of silence. 18 years of being drugged into blindness. He didn't know that the comfort he cherished was a carefully crafted illusion. He didn't know that the woman he loved had turned his nights into her freedom. He didn't know that every pill he swallowed made it easier for her to slip into a world he was never meant to see. He didn't know, because trust, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes the most dangerous sleep of all. And in all those years, not once did he ask what might happen if he simply stayed awake. Suspicion doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes softly, disguised as a joke spoken over a mailbox. That evening, he walked outside to collect the letters the way he always did. Slow steps, tired breath, mind already drifting toward dinner and the familiar weight of his nightly pill. But his neighbor waved at him, smiling, and with a laugh that meant nothing to him at the time, said something that would change everything. "Your house is popular at night," the neighbor teased. "I keep seeing a dark car parked by your back gate after midnight. Must be someone visiting your wife when you're knocked out, huh?" The man laughed politely, because that was the expected response. But the laugh didn't sit right in his chest. It clung to his ribs like a cold hand. He offered a flimsy excuse. Maybe it was a delivery truck, or maybe someone turning around. His neighbor shrugged, unconcerned, and walked away. But the words stayed. A dark car. After midnight. Visiting your wife. He carried the mail inside, but he didn't read it. He didn't even remove his shoes. He just stood there in the hallway, staring at the floor, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, an unease that didn't come from exhaustion or routine. It came from instinct, an instinct he didn't realize he still had. That night, the house felt colder. His wife moved around the kitchen humming softly, the same melody she always hummed, but there was something strange about it now. Too light, too casual, too rehearsed. He sat at the table pretending to read the newspaper, but his eyes didn't track the words. He was listening instead, listening to the way her footsteps glided from room to room, listening to the faint creaks in the floorboards, listening to the silence between them. When she handed him the pill, he didn't speak. He held it between his fingers longer than usual, turning it slowly, watching the small white circle glow dimly under the kitchen light. She noticed nothing. She kissed his forehead gently and told him to sleep early. He nodded, but he didn't swallow the pill. For the first time in 18 years, he hesitated. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if he stayed awake. He brought the pill to his mouth, hid it under his tongue, and tilted his head back as if swallowing. She watched him, smiling in quiet satisfaction, unaware that habit had finally broken, unaware that tonight she wouldn't own the darkness. When she turned away to rinse a dish, he slipped the pill from under his tongue and tucked it into his pocket. His heart hammered hard enough that he feared she might hear it. But she didn't look back. She had never been afraid of him being awake, because for 18 years he never had been. He lay in bed, eyes closed, breathing steady. He made his chest rise and fall with slow precision, mimicking sleep so well it frightened even him. He heard her approach, felt her gaze on his face. She watched him long enough to ensure the illusion held, then slowly walked away. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, loud enough to drown the hum of the air conditioner. Every second felt like a test of courage, a test he wasn't sure he could pass. His body, conditioned for years to collapse after that pill, fought him. His limbs felt heavy, his eyelids thick, but he forced himself to stay alert, gripping the bedsheets until his knuckles ached. Around 10:30, he heard her move again. Quiet footsteps, too deliberate, too cautious. She paused at the bedroom doorway, listening. When she heard nothing, she began down the hallway. Her gait changed subtly. The soft shuffle of a wife became the stealthy glide of someone with a secret. He heard the faintest sound, the click of the back door, a sound he had dismissed for years, a sound he had once believed belonged to the house, the wind, the night. But now it was loud. Now it was unmistakable. Time stretched painfully. Minutes passed, 5, 10, 20. Then he heard something he had never heard fully before. The muted thud of a car door closing outside. His stomach twisted. His breath hitched. His world, once fogged by medication, was suddenly sharp and unbearable. He rose from the bed as quietly as he could. Every joint protested. His muscles were not used to moving at this hour. His legs trembled, not from fear, but from years of being drugged into vulnerability. He pressed his hand against the wall to steady himself, his body awakening to a night it hadn't belonged to in almost 2 decades. He walked to the window, careful with every step, and peered through the narrow gap in the curtain. There it was, a car he had never seen, engine off, lights dimmed, parked just beyond the fence, as if hiding. His chest tightened. His mouth went dry. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want the picture forming in his mind to be real. But truth has a way of stripping away comfort, tearing down illusions no matter how deeply they are rooted. He returned to the bed, sitting on the edge, staring at the floor until he heard her footsteps again, soft, hurried, familiar. She entered the house around midnight, moving with silent confidence. This wasn't the first time, not even close. When she entered the bedroom, he could smell it, faint but undeniable. Cologne, a scent that didn't belong to him, a scent that clung to her like a confession. He didn't confront her. Not yet. He couldn't. He lay there, rigid, silent, feeling his world fractured down the middle. She slipped into bed, adjusting the sheets, her breathing uneven for a moment before settling. She thought he was asleep. She thought she was safe. He stared in the darkness, feeling a storm rise inside him. Disbelief, anger, heartbreak, nausea. He felt betrayed, foolish, humiliated. But most of all, he felt awake. For the first time in 18 years, he wasn't drowning in chemically induced sleep. The next morning, she acted as she always did. Breakfast simmered on the stove. She greeted him with a kiss on the cheek. Her voice was light, calm, practiced. She talked about errands, about needing to pick up a few things from the store, about having a busy day ahead. He didn't respond. He watched her instead. Watched the way her hands trembled slightly when she thought he wasn't looking. Watched her eyes dart away when he held his gaze a second too long. Watched the mask she had worn for so many years slip at the edges. That night, when she tried to hand him another pill, he smiled faintly and shook his head. He told her he felt fine, that he didn't need it. Her reaction was immediate, subtle, but telling. Her smile wavered. Her eyes widened just slightly. "You should still take it," she whispered, her voice tight. "Just in case. Maybe tomorrow," he said. It was the first time he had said no to her, and the first time her facade cracked. He pretended to go to bed early. She followed, hovering, watching him with a strange intensity. When she believed he was asleep, she slipped from the room quietly. This time, he followed her. He moved slowly, unsure, heart pounding. The house was dark, the air heavy. As he stepped into the hallway, he noticed the soft glow of the porch light flicker in the reflection of the floorboards. Then he heard it. A laugh. Not hers alone. A man's laugh. Deep, confident, comfortable. He froze, breath caught in his throat. He moved closer, inch by inch, until he could see through the narrow space between the door and the wall. What he saw wasn't a shock. It was a confirmation. A truth finally unmasked. She stood in the kitchen wearing a robe, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in years. Carefree, unburdened, radiant. A man leaned against the counter casually, his jacket hanging on the same chair where he used to place his after-work. They spoke in low voices, intimate, familiar. She touched his hand. He pulled her closer. The man's presence filled the room. His confidence, his ease, his comfort in the home that wasn't his. The home that had belonged to a marriage now revealed as a lie. In that moment, the husband's heart didn't just break. It imploded. 18 years of trust shattered like glass beneath his feet. 18 years of love turned to poison. 18 years of routines he once believed kept their marriage strong were exposed as mechanisms designed to keep him unconscious, unaware, unquestioning. Something inside him snapped. Not angrily, not violently. It snapped quietly, the way a thread finally gives way after years of being stretched too thin. He pushed the door open. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. They both turned. Her face drained of color instantly. Shock, guilt, terror, all swirling together. The man stumbled back, knocking over a chair in his panic, grabbing his jacket before darting out the back door like a coward who had been caught stealing. She stood frozen, trembling, her hands over her mouth. She tried to speak, words, excuses, lies forming on her lips, but he didn't hear any of it. His ears rang. His chest tightened. The room around him blurred. Everything felt distant, dreamlike, unreal. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He didn't ask why. He just stared at her. In his silence, she collapsed, sobbing, pleading, trying to hold together a world that had already burned down. He walked past her without a word, sat at the table, and looked at the bottle of pills still sitting there. Those small white circles that had stolen 18 years of his nights, 18 years of his awareness, 18 years of truth. The label blurred behind his tears, and his hands clenched until the paper tore. That was the night he understood he had never been asleep by choice. He had been kept asleep. That was the night he realized the woman he loved had not been a partner. She had been a warden, and he had been her prisoner. He didn't sleep that night, not because he couldn't, but because the kind of truth he had just witnessed doesn't allow the mind to rest. He sat alone in the dim bedroom, the house silent except for the distant ticking of the clock. Every second that passed felt like a reminder of how many years he had lost. 18 years of nights he couldn't get back. 18 years of trust he could no longer recognize. The darkness around him vibrated with memories. Her smile, her touch, her quiet lies whispered between the walls. He stared into nothing, feeling the weight of betrayal settling over him like a cold, suffocating blanket. He heard her in the hallway sometime after 3 a.m., pacing like a ghost unsure of how to haunt. She didn't knock on the door. She didn't dare. Instead, She hovered outside, her breath trembling, her steps hesitant. She wanted to speak, but didn't know which version of the truth she could still use to defend herself. None of them mattered anymore. When dawn finally arrived, the light seeping through the curtains felt cruel. It cast a pale glow over the room, illuminating the pieces of his life that now felt unfamiliar. The furniture looked foreign, the photos on the walls empty, the bed beside him contaminated. He was awake, but it felt like waking inside a ruined world. He rose slowly, body stiff from sitting all night, and made his way to the kitchen. She was there, sitting on the couch, hair tangled, eyes swollen, hands shaking. She looked smaller, fragile even. A part of him remembered the woman he once loved, the years they shared, the life they built. But the memory felt distant, like recalling a dream that turns into a nightmare halfway through. She looked up at him, with eyes full of desperation. He didn't return the look. She started talking immediately, her voice breaking with every word. She spoke of loneliness, of stress, of mistakes she never meant to make. She tried to paint the betrayal as an accident, something that just happened after years of emotional distance. But her excuses floated in the air like dust, weightless, useless, insubstantial. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't rage or accuse or cry. He simply watched her, expression blank, feeling nothing but a quiet coldness spreading through his chest. He realized something then, something sharp, painful, and liberating. He didn't care what she had to say. Not anymore. Words couldn't erase the image of her smiling at another man under his roof. Words couldn't drown out the memory of the cologne lingering on her skin. Words couldn't undo 18 years of being drugged into silence while she lived freely in the shadows. He turned away from her and walked through the house, absorbing every detail he had once overlooked. The way she kept the drawers meticulously organized, the stack of empty pill bottles hidden in a corner, the prescriptions written in his name, refilled repeatedly by her hand. His life had become a script she wrote, and he unknowingly performed. He opened the bottle of sleeping pills, turning it over in his palm. He imagined how easy it had been for her. One small pill every night, one effortless gesture, 18 years of control. It wasn't the betrayal of her body that destroyed him. It was the betrayal of his autonomy. She hadn't just cheated on him. She had stolen his nights. She had stolen his clarity. She had stolen his ability to see the truth of his own home. He closed the bottle with a shaking hand and placed it on the counter with finality. That chapter of his life was over. He went to the bedroom and began packing. His movements were deliberate, methodical. A few clothes, important documents, a wallet, nothing more. He didn't want to take anything that held her touch, her presence, her memories. He didn't want to carry pieces of a life that had been built on deceit. She followed him to the doorway, tearful, pleading again. "You can't just leave," she whispered. But she didn't understand. He had already left, long before he zipped the bag closed. His soul had walked away the moment he saw her in that kitchen with another man. The person he used to be, the trusting husband, the gentle partner, the man who swallowed pills without question, had died in the darkness of the previous night. The man standing in the bedroom now was someone new, someone awake. He brushed past her without speaking and walked toward the door. Her hand reached for his arm, fingers trembling. He pulled away as if her touch burned. Outside, the sunlight hit him like a shock. It warmed his skin, but it didn't comfort him. It felt unfamiliar, too bright, too honest. He stood there for a moment, breathing in the cold morning air, realizing it was the first breath he had taken freely in 18 years. He walked down the street with no destination, just movement, just escape. The world around him felt loud and alive. Cars passing, birds calling, distant chatter of neighbors. All sounds he had been numb to for years. His senses felt raw, but awakened. He didn't return home that day. Instead, he checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town. The room was plain, stiff mattress, buzzing air conditioner, faded curtains. But it felt cleaner than the house he had left. Cleaner because there were no lies inside its walls. He lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, mind racing, heart aching. He felt anger, grief, humiliation, but underneath all of it, he felt clarity. He wasn't drowning anymore. He wasn't blind. He wasn't silent. He was awake. That night, he slept without pills for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Sleep came slowly, painfully, even violently at times, but it came. And when he opened his eyes in the morning, he felt something he hadn't felt since he was young. Choice. The next morning, he drove straight to his lawyer's office. There was no trembling this time, no hesitation. He explained everything. Every pill, every prescription, every late-night disappearance, every betrayal. The lawyer listened, shocked, horrified, but ready to act. The legal process began immediately. Divorce papers were filed before noon. His assets, house, car accounts, were shifted out of her control. The pills, the receipts, the documented patterns, all of it became evidence. Evidence not just of infidelity, but of manipulation, of control, of deliberate deception. For 18 years, she had orchestrated his nights. Now he would rewrite his days without her. When he returned to the house a few days later to gather the last of his belongings, she was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself like someone bracing against a storm. Wade placed the divorce papers on the table. Her face crumpled. The tears came instantly. The pleading began again. But he stood there silent, untouched by her sorrow. She had cried before. She had lied before. Tears held no truth now. He left the papers there and walked away. The divorce was brutal for her, effortless for him. In every court session, truth hammered down on her like a relentless tide. The judge saw the evidence. The lawyers saw the pattern. The world saw the woman who built her comfort on lies and medication. She lost the house. She lost the savings. She lost her reputation. She even lost the man she had betrayed with. He disappeared the moment accountability entered the picture. When the judge read the final ruling, she stood alone, shaking, her life collapsing around her in silence. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. Some victories don't feel like triumph. They feel like closure. When it was over, he sold the house. He couldn't bear the memories stitched into its walls. He took the money and moved far away, into a small, quiet place that didn't carry her shadow. The first night in his new home, he sat by the window with a cup of tea, breathing the cold air deeply. There were no pills on the counter, no lies behind him, no footsteps echoing in the dark. For the first time in 18 years, silence felt pure. He didn't miss her. He missed the version of her he thought existed, the version she pretended to be, the version he loved before he knew the truth. But that woman never existed. He had loved a ghost, a mask, a performance. And now, finally, the performance was over. Peace does not return loudly. It comes quietly, cautiously, like a wounded animal sniffing at the edges of a life that has finally stopped hurting. That is how his healing began, soft, hesitant, almost unrecognizable after so many years spent living in someone else's shadow. The days following the divorce were silent and strange. There were no routines to follow, no pills to swallow, no footsteps to anticipate in the hallway at night. The world around him looked bigger, unfamiliar, almost overwhelming. For years, he had lived inside a schedule so rigid it felt like a cage disguised as comfort. Now he stood in open space, unsure where to place his feet. He moved into a small apartment on the far side of town. Nothing grand, nothing polished, just a place untouched by lies. The walls were plain, the furniture mismatched, the air carrying no trace of her perfume or secrets. It was imperfect, but it was his. Every corner felt honest. Every silence felt real. The first few nights were brutal. His body didn't understand sleep without pills. His mind, unmedicated for the first time in nearly 2 decades, replayed everything. Her smile as she handed him the pill, the cold click of the back door, the man's laugh echoing in the kitchen. He lay awake for hours, gripping the sheets, heart racing. Even when exhaustion took him, sleep came shallow and restless. But each night was slightly easier than the one before. Little by little, the silence that once frightened him began to soothe him. The darkness that once hid betrayal now became a place where he could breathe. He learned to hear things again. The distant hum of traffic, the soft whistling of wind against the window, the quiet rhythm of his own heartbeat. The world was speaking to him again, and for the first time in years, he was awake enough to listen. He kept himself busy during the days. He found small jobs around town, fixing fences, repairing furniture, helping with yard work. People appreciated him, trusted him, respected him. It was a foreign feeling at first, being valued without being controlled. But he grew into it. One day, the elderly woman next door brought him a plate of fresh bread and said she heard he was handy with tools. Another day, a man from down the street asked him to fix a broken gate. Each small interaction reminded him of something he thought he had lost. The simple sense of being part of a world where he wasn't asleep. He spoke little, kept mostly to himself, but the town warmed to him. They didn't know his history. They didn't know the nights he spent drugged into darkness. They didn't know his wife's betrayal or the years he lost inside her lies. But they treated him with a kind, gentle familiarity, and that was enough. He didn't need pity. He didn't need an audience for his pain. He just needed space to breathe and time to rebuild. Months passed. Seasons changed. He began cooking for himself, learning little recipes he used to watch his wife make. At first, the taste of his own food felt strange, almost as if he had forgotten what nourishment felt like. But eventually, he started to enjoy it. The chopping, the stirring, the careful seasoning. It grounded him. It reminded him that he could take care of himself, that he didn't need someone else to manage his life. He took walks in the evenings, letting the wind touch his face, letting the sky darken above him without fear. Night used to be the time she owned, the time he surrendered to the pill and drifted into oblivion. Now the night belonged to him again. He walked beneath streetlights, listening to the soft scrape of his footsteps, feeling the freedom in every breath. One evening, he heard his phone buzz. A name appeared on the screen. Her name. The woman who had once controlled his nights. He stared at the screen, not with anger, not with grief, but with a profound emptiness. She had called before, many times. Messages piled up, unread. Apologies, explanations, desperate attempts to resurrect something already buried. He felt nothing as he watched the screen light up. No hate, no longing, just stillness. He didn't answer. He let the phone ring until it stopped, then set it aside. Some rings are meant to fade into silence. Weeks later, she tried again. This time she sent a long message. She missed him. She was sorry. She never meant to hurt him. He read none of it. He deleted the message and returned to his tea, unbothered. Time had carved distance between them so thick that even her voice couldn't cross it anymore. He began writing in notebooks, thoughts, reflections, memories he needed to take out of his mind and place somewhere safe. Writing became his therapy. His way of untangling the knots betrayal had left inside him. He wrote about trust, about blindness, about the quiet ways love can become control. He wrote not to remember her, but to remember himself. The man he had been, the man he had become, the man he was learning to be. Years passed, slow and steady. He heard once, through someone in town, that she had remarried, then divorced again. The new marriage didn't survive even a year. He felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction, no revenge-filled joy, just a distant awareness that her life was unraveling the way lies always do. She had become a stranger wearing the face of the woman he once loved, someone he used to know only in dreams that turned into nightmares. He didn't wish her pain. He didn't wish her happiness either. She simply did not exist in his world anymore. His world had become a small, simple place, a quiet home, a tidy garden, a warm kettle hissing on the stove at night. He lived alone, but not lonely. Peace had replaced the ache inside him, filling the spaces where pain once lived. Sometimes he stood in the grocery store aisle and saw the familiar packaging of sleeping pills. He would pause, staring at the small bottles lined up neatly on the shelf. Tiny things, harmless looking, almost innocent. But to him, they were reminders of a life stolen, of nights erased, of trust shattered. He never touched them again. He didn't need help to sleep anymore. His sleep was earned, honest, quiet, uninterrupted by secrets. Every night, before going to bed, he opened the window and breathed in the cool breeze. The air carried the scent of the world he had reclaimed, unfiltered, unpoisoned, real. He sipped tea slowly, watching the moon rise, letting peace settle deep into his bones. He learned something powerful through his suffering. That walking away is sometimes the purest form of revenge. Not shouting, not fighting, not hurting back. Just leaving, quietly, completely, and letting time take care of the rest. People sometimes asked him, with gentle curiosity, if he ever forgave her. He never answered directly. Forgiveness wasn't something he needed to give her. Forgiveness, he realized, wasn't about letting someone back into your life. It wasn't about saying the pain was okay. Forgiveness was closure, and he already had that. He had earned it the night he walked out the door and never turned around. She was a lesson now, nothing more. A chapter he survived, not a person he missed. He learned the most important truth of all. That peace does not come from trusting others blindly. It comes from refusing to tolerate anything that suffocates your spirit. Peace comes from choosing yourself, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And sometimes, the deepest sleep finally ends not with a scream, but with a quiet awakening. She had given him pills to keep him asleep, but she forgot one thing. Even the longest, deepest sleep ends one day. And when he woke up, truly woke up, he made sure she never slept peacefully again. In the end, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't destroy her life with rage. He didn't chase her, fight her, or beg for answers she never had. He simply walked away. And sometimes that is the sharpest blade a betrayed heart can carry. Because what she never understood is that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes revenge is a man waking up from a darkness designed to keep him blind. Sometimes revenge is choosing peace over poison. Sometimes revenge is rebuilding a life where her shadow can no longer reach. She took his nights, but he reclaimed his mornings. She stole 18 years, but he took back the rest of his life. And when he finally closed the door behind him, he didn't just leave her. He left the man she thought she had broken. He rose from the ashes she created. He healed in the silence she feared. And in the echoes of that quiet victory, one truth remained unmovable. When a man wakes up from the sleep of betrayal, he becomes someone no lie can ever control again. A life reborn, a heart reclaimed, a revenge delivered without a single word. This is not the story of what she did to him. This is the story of how he survived her and became stronger than the darkness she tried to bury him in.